By the mid to late 23rd century, the Earth finally had reached some semblance of utopia and had risen above the petty squabbles of historical events. Well, mostly. There would be elements that were still racist within Starfleet, but most of them were tamped down or individual cases. This trend continued as a norm into the 24th century, where Starfleet officers, and indeed most of humanity as a whole, lacked internal biases against others. Mostly. That's not to say it didn't happen, it just appears to be the exception, not the rule. However, this wasn't the case in the 22nd century when the United Earth's Starfleet was still trying to understand civilizations and explore the stars. On that topic, it's really intriguing to look at a person's story arc at the end and juxtapose that against the beginning. While in the episodes we'll be looking at, all of this seems horrible, you need to remember the very genesis of why Starfleet launched into the stars and began its exploration was based on hatred. Captain Archer's disdain and mistrust of the Vulcans spurred the United Earth to launch its first Warp 5 vessel and engage in diplomatic relations with another hostile race. Throughout the series, this bigotry would lead into issues between the governments of the Vulcan Ascendancy and the United Earth. The two would have problems that resulted in their alliance being temporarily halted from time to time. However, time would do its thing, and the understanding of the Vulcans and what they had to endure, along with seeing how missteps in the galaxy result in grave repercussions, created a camaraderie for Captain Archer, as well as Starfleet Command. Just remember, Captain Archer and some of his crew were just as bigoted as the people we see in Terra Prime, as well as demons. The reason we see changes in Captain Archer and others is because these events impacted him. These relationships and direct interactions showed him how he was wrong. The nuances of understanding what was really happening and why governments, and indeed people, are making the decisions that they are, is lost to the greater population. For the wider populace, it's not as complicated. From a citizen of the United Earth's point of view, it really was quite simple. The Earth made first contact with the Vulcans, who held them back, and then, maybe due to this, the Xindi arrived with a weapon and killed tens to hundreds of thousands of humans, and almost completely destroyed the Earth. Truth be told, it did seem like the immigration of alien species and the interactions with their governments was severely hurting humanity overall, at least for the uneducated. It would be no surprise that a group like Terra Prime was able to worm its way into the public, and even Starfleet, and slowly but steadily start to gain support. The arguments by Terra Prime apologists were appealing, even to moderates. I mean, look, yes, there are some extreme elements of Terra Prime that want to kill or harm aliens and take their planets. Most people are obviously idiots, but they're not wrong that alien species hurt humanity. These people are literally coming to Earth and killing us. I mean, hell, Starfleet shares our coordinates with every species they come across. Does that sound smart to you? And these aliens, they're even stealing our jobs. Did you hear that the executive officer is a Vulcan and the chief medical officer is a Denobulan of Starfleet's first Warp 5 vessel? Because when humanity wants to explore the stars, what do? We send aliens to do it for us. Screw letting humanity do its thing and explore. Am I right? I've stated this quite a bit, but it bears repeating. The most effective, radical, racist, bigoted, misogynistic, hateful arguments, regardless of if they come from the left-leaning masses or the right-leaning masses, are most effective when they have a kernel of truth in them. Terra Prime discussing how sharing the coordinates of Earth to everyone is going to create issues isn't wrong. I mean, the Xindi certainly had no problem finding Terra after all. And also how allowing diplomacy with alien species is going to cause some harm to humanity. These aren't really debatable facts. We see them happen. But it's really sad to me that they never take the time to address those concerns and discuss the positives. Now, fret not, I'll get into that more later, but let's continue for now. The whole reason for even getting into this piece is to show how some people can become useful idiots for Terra Prime. Because even in the episodes we observe, as I said, Enterprise's demons and Terra Prime, people have been, and even still are, useful idiots for the terrorist organization. Hell, the man who orchestrated the entire creation of the coalition of planets who's trying to get it together was a part of the terrorist group. I can only imagine if the masses found out. I mean, that would be a canceling that Lindsay Ellis had not experienced. But that kind of belies the problem with this terrorist organization and goes back to nuance. People will see something, think that it's positive, and join it. And if there's no arguments given to why it shouldn't be joined, they'll think they're right. They like the surface level but may not understand the undertones. And then, after they've done this, even if they realize they're wrong, forever and always it will be a mark on their character. So we've kind of discussed why someone might want to join Terra Prime, but let's look at their arguments a bit more in depth. As I've mentioned, the introduction of aliens has seemingly caused problems with immigration, with safety, and purity. Let's address that last piece first. Whether we are in the real world or in the fictional universe of Star Trek, I don't understand the need for purity. Any diseases or malformations, while they can be found in larger quantities depending on certain phenotypes, exist in all humans. Likewise, this holds true for the Trek universe among the other species as far as I can tell. There is no evidence that mixing of various DNA leads to a net negative or a bad quality of life. It's possible to have traits added or diminished based on the pairings, of course. So, for instance, a betazoid and a human who breed may result in offspring that has telepathic abilities, but they're diminished compared to a full-blooded betazoid. That's neither good nor bad, though. It just comes down to a trait preference. And to really just put the cherry on top, there's nothing inherently good about being human, and likewise, there's nothing inherently bad about being betazoid or Vulcan. Purity is just arbitrary. What people usually mean is culture when they say purity, something that always changes, even within the quote-unquote pure populations. It's also possible to preserve the good things within your culture, but add other good things from others. Together, it can be better. Obviously, there will be clashes between ideals, but generally, that forges an even stronger bond. When looking at safety, it's true that there was a Xindi attack, and this was likely because humanity was very open about giving coordinates to their planet. Starfleet was too friendly, but it's possible to do what Starfleet did, but just take it more slowly. And when you look at it, the Vulcans never really wanted to subjugate humanity. They wanted to help. And in fact, Vulcan fleets are some of the reasons that Earth was never invaded. The coalition of planets, when you look at it through science and logic, will actually protect humanity more than harm it. As for immigration, well, that goes both ways if done right. You can have jobs anywhere you want, there or here, and having more people means that you'll need more services. It's possible that some sectors will be inundated with more workers, but that just means that other sectors open up. Especially in this age when you can really go and be more than what you can in the real world. But all of this lies my frustrations with the 2 Enterprise episodes. I don't feel like they ever really address this to any detail. They never go up against the villain and really debate his point. The only reason we know he is wrong is because he is fighting the protagonists, and that just means you side with the heroes because the show tells you to. That's bad storytelling. The best way to really address the concerns are to get to the base of it. It goes to a discussion. When we look at the heroes of the villain, he bases his beliefs largely on another villain, on a tyrant, that ensured the annihilation of a population that had genetic defects due to radiation. That in itself is wrong, but honestly, the villain of the episode has made it easy. We don't have to argue that point. There's no evidence of deformity in interracial species, so there's not really a concern. His point is moot. The science is in, lads. While I know this wouldn't be effective for him or his closest followers, for those on the fence, for those concerned, it would be quite compelling. And it would be a great confrontation for the heroes and the villain to go through. Now, obviously, some in the comments and the villain would bring up that Elizabeth died, but that was because of issues in the cloning process, not because Elizabeth couldn't exist. It's not because the sides were warring, like he said. It's because an idiot got idiot scientists to try to do something and they failed. By simply defeating the bad guy, we don't get to show his errors. And yes, my friends, you can write all of this and it be compelling. If you don't think so, just take a look at In the Pale Moonlight and The Drumhead. Those writers would like to have a word. Anyway, the defeat of the villain means that the riots simmer down, but that's a shame. Just because they defeated the main head of Terra Prime doesn't mean the hate goes away. It would have been nice to see this whole conversation. I do know that at the end they have a great big speech, and it's done really well. But honestly, one of the issues with Legacy Trek is you never see ideas go up against each other completely. There are episodes that do it, but there's a lot of episodes that don't as well. That's not to say that these aren't 2 great episodes. You definitely should watch them. I just think they missed the mark in this way. But at least it did start a conversation. And that's what Trek is about. Starting conversations. These are just my thoughts, though. Let me know yours. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.